This is an off-the-shelf video. The game is Infidel, Volume 2 in the Men of Iron series. Supremacy of Cavalry in the Crusader era, 11th and 12th century. The game or the scenario is Harran. Basically, we have a I'm trying to remember what they actually call it. Call it a Turkish army, which seems incredibly inappropriate. Sounds inappropriate. I don't know. Yeah, they call it a Turkish army. Okay. Don't care for that. It doesn't sound right. All right, Turkish army. Basically 3 major commands. And then we have a Crusader army made up of an Edessan army and an Antioch army. Labeled anyways. Alright, the game started with Karaca of Harran taking the Syrian medium cavalry from the Turkish center and taking a full move across the stream, the Balikh stream. Heading for Baldwin II's right flank there. Then the Turkish side tries to get continuity with of Mosul, that force over there. But instead, Bohemond of Taranto here with some knights seized continuity. So we're going to pick up with these knights, and I think we'll just play this pretty aggressively. So these knights are going to go straight for Karaca and his medium cavalry. So I'm going to move these Sicilian Norman knights straight towards Karaca and his Syrian medium cavalry. The only thing in between us is the elevation here, the level 2 terrain. And so using the terrain chart for Harran, going upslope is +1 for mounted. Well, it's +1 for foot too. Yeah, actually we do have some foot on the Crusader side. And of note, the foot actually have a +1 going downslope, but the mounted 0. Interesting thinking there. All right, I'm gonna move out. One more thing, I want to do a side-by-side comparison, unit comparison here between the Syrian medium cavalry and the Sicilian Norman knight, because the first thing you notice is, movement's the same. They both have 7 movement allowance. Now the 0 for the medium cavalry is the shock defense DRM. The knights have -2. Yes, shock defense DRM, the -2 being better than the 0. So I'm wondering what else distinguishes a knight from any other cavalry, and in this case a medium cavalry. So I'm going to look at the player aid card here. Okay, so you have the weapon systems matrix for shock and charge. Attacker, it has a note A, unit types not listed here as attackers may not shock, attack, or charge. Okay, so when the knight is attacking, medium cavalry gets a +2, which looks like that's good. And then when medium cavalry attack a knight, they get -3. So actually, my initial impression is these forces aren't even comparable. So it'll be interesting to see how well the medium cavalry can even stand up to the knights on initial contact. In addition, at the very end of the rules, under 16, knights and other special unit types, we have knights. Knights have special rules which reflect their aggressive, sometimes overly independent spirit. Knights are never out of command, regardless of where their commander command leader is, except for purposes of charge reaction to enemy missile fire. Okay. No charge reluctance for knights. Charge reaction to missile fire is automatic unless restrained by their command leader. Okay. That could be really significant in this battle with all of this Turkish mounted archers. Knights never retire. Whenever a knight suffers a retire result, it is retreated instead. Okay. Okay, so Bohemond full move towards the Syrian medium cavalry there. So now I guess the Crusader side chooses another commander to continue with. So Baldwin II, he's got a line of knights in the front. I think Baldwin II wants to, and I wonder if they can charge now, but, well, they will charge if they can. They're going to charge right into Karaja there. But, so I guess I declare Baldwin II, but then now, I don't see why Sokman, there with his very large force of Turkoman mounted cavalry, mounted archers, wouldn't try to seize continuity. So we'll take a look at that. Just while I'm looking at it, I think I found, so under Chapter 6 Activation Continuity, under 6.2 Continuity, so that would be Baldwin II's attempt. And right there, buried in this paragraph here at the end, it says leaders that are within command range of their overall commander have their activation rating increased by 1 for continuation and seizure die rolls. That seems to be okay. First of all, I don't remember seeing that on the player aid cards. So 1, I consider it buried, and 2, that's I mean, that's also under continuity, but it refers to seizure die rolls as well. So earlier, when I was wondering why, it said something to the effect of, no, it's on the extended sequence of play, where it says, seize continuity, roll the die adding any modifiers, and compares it to blah, blah, blah. I was wondering what modifiers are they referring to? Well, that's 1. Okay, so, but, well, I just note that in passing, but instead, I think Sokman, I mean, he is an overall commander, so I think it's just a straight test against his activation rating, which is a 4. Sokman of Aleppo, activation rating of 4, the white 4 against the red background top right. I may not be putting my leaders back in exactly the right spot, but it will. So Sokman rolls a 1, easily seizes continuity. Already, this is creating a fairly chaotic flow of play, meaning I originally thought that Karaja would charge here, Turkmenish would support with a flanking attack over here. Instead, Bohemond and his knights have not charged, but advanced full speed towards the Syrian medium cavalry. Now Sokman is going to advance here instead of Baldwin charging. This fairly chaotic. All right, so let's move Sokman up and see if we can get some firing. I think the range of all artillery in this I think the range of all ranged fire units is 2 in this game. I'll double check that, and we'll get the Turkoman light cavalry. They have a movement allowance of 8. So basically, Sokman and his Turkoman cavalry are going to try to sweep around here. Of course, now they have to negotiate the Syrian medium cavalry there. So first I advanced as many Turkoman light cavalry archers as I could to within firing range, which is 2 hexes of the knights here. Then I brought up a second line, leaving a gap. I don't know if this is relevant or not in these rules. I don't know yet whether it's relevant, but thought I would leave a gap for potential disaster. And then tried to bring as many as I could around this side. Basically being a few hexes distant from the knights. Thought I would push as many as I could through here, and tried to keep Sokman as centrally located as possible. Just reminder, his command range there is 7 on the black circle. Okay. Now, question is, what do the knights do? My first question is, could the knights have interrupted any of this? I'll double check that real quick. And then if they couldn't have interrupted any of this movement, now how can they react to this advance? Okay, so first of all, it looks like these mounted archers can fire now. They're not in an enemy zoc. I know these guys in the front here use their whole movement allowance of 8 to get within bow range of the knights. But because they're not in a zoc, it's 0 movement points for them to fire. So they can fire at the end of their 8 hex move. That much I know. And as a result of being fired on with missile fire, the knights can attempt to countercharge. Try to figure out... Okay, on the extended sequence of play, let's see if this helps us. A mounted missile unit may fire at any point during its move. We're doing that. A non-active player's units may qualify for reaction return fire. That is not this case. Or countercharge, depending on the active player's actions. Yes, yeah, so that's 13.6. We'll look at that. Am I countercharging one at a time, or is this completely separate? Okay, so since fire is part of movement for the mounted archers, I'm thinking maybe I was supposed to fire at the end of each unit's move, one at a time. I was doing this phased. I guess that's probably not supposed to do it that way. I'm not sure, but it's looking like I wasn't supposed to do that. As far as countercharging against fire, that's automatic for these knights. Except, I think I'm going to exercise the rules where, all right, so I'm going to execute Turkoman's fire one at a time, even though I should have done it, I think, as part of each unit's move. That's interesting, though. So you'll know what the results of each one is as you go down, as you go through your moves. Okay. But instead of exercising the rule for countercharging the knights, I think I'm going to try to exercise the rules of Baldwin restraining the knights. So that's what I'm going to do. So we have fire. We have an attempt to restrain the knights from countercharging. If that fails, then we'll have some countercharging. Okay, I wasn't quite expecting this to be this involved. There's also the light cavalry's option to retreat before combat, which has to be factored in. And then it looks like, okay, so the Turkoman light cavalry comes up here, and it looks like, I say oddly enough, the countercharge happens before the fire, which is funny when it says enemy missile fire may induce targeted knights. Then is it the process? Except that the countercharge die roll is made before the fire is resolved. Well, okay, I guess it's just the die roll, but okay. So we'll just start on the side here. So I have to try to restrain. Oh, but he would have to be targeted first. All right. So sure, the Turkoman light cavalry is going to target this knight for fire. And then now Baldwin II is going to try to restrain the knight. I'm going to go through this procedure of trying to get Baldwin II to restrain the knight, but I noticed that Baldwin II has a command range of only 4. I mean, that's almost half of the Turkish. All right, so for example, Baldwin II has 4, Jocelyn has 4, Bohemond has 5, and Tancred has 5. So 4 and 5 on the Crusader side, whereas the Turks have 7 for Sokman, 6 for Karaja, and 5 for Turkmenish. So Baldwin II rolls a 7. He subtracts his activation rating from that roll. So 7 minus 3 is 4. And if the adjusted die roll is 3 or less, no countercharge takes place. If the adjusted die roll is 4 or more, the knight countercharges. So he just barely was unable to restrain the knight. So now we go to a knight's countercharge. Okay, so I'm kind of wondering what happened to all the Turkoman arrows, but I guess the next thing I have to do is the knight moves adjacent to the firing unit, and then we execute a charge attack. But I guess now I'm going to move to the Turkoman unit is going to try to retreat before combat. Okay, so the light cavalry moves back 1 hex first, and it'll then do a die roll, modify it with its DRM rating +1, and then we'll see what the result is. Roll of 8 +1 for the defensive shock defensive DRM for 9, which is if the adjusted die roll is 6 or more, the unit retreats but is disordered. So I'll flip him over to his disordered side. Don't think I've gone over this yet, but the flip side of this counter shows its disordered side, the D in the caution sign there. F-1 is a reminder that fire is a -1 DRM, is at -1 DRM. The shock defensive DRM is 1 worse in this case. I don't know if this is uniform, but this unit's defensive shock DRM is worse, 1 worse, and movement is 1 less. So that's the disordered side. Now I'm not sure, but I would think something happens with the knight in this vacated hex. Not 100% sure about this, but I guess the knight advances into the vacated hex, may not shock or change facing. So I guess that's how I leave it. And then the same procedure, I'm going to do the same procedure for all the rest of these. And I guess it is an individual procedure. Baldwin will try to restrain. I'll just do the same thing. Baldwin will try to restrain. And the Turkoman will retreat before combat. So if you're doing this unit by unit, that's huge. It's huge to be able to see the results, but oh well. I'm not going to change any of my tactics or decisions made up to this point. I'm just going to play it through. Obviously, playing it through how it was supposed to be, unit by unit, wouldn't have necessarily done this, but just going to play this through for the mechanics. Also, I wanted to walk through this one because right away, right off the bat, Baldwin successfully restrained the knight here with a 0. subtract his activation rating. Yes. So no countercharge. So now the Turkoman unit executes its fire against the knight. So we have our first ranged fire. Normally, ranged fires through frontal and flank hexes, by the way. Or, yeah, hexes. Yeah, frontal and flank hexes. All right, so resolving fire. Okay, we know our range is 2. Turkoman mounted archers to knight. 1, 2. Consult the fire range chart. Fire range DRM chart. Guess they qualify as archers at range 2, -1. So we start with a -1. DRMs for missile fire. Okay, so it's -1 for range. Defender's terrain. That's just open. Nothing, right? Angled fire at medium or light cavalry. Well, doesn't apply because we're firing at knights anyways. But angled fire. I guess that means up angled. Yeah, high angle or high trajectory fire. Okay, firing at camp followers. No. Disordered unit firing. Disordered unit firing. No. Mounted archers firing. They are mounted. Oh, so there is a penalty for mounted archers. I was wondering about that. So we're up to -2. Firing at knights or heavy cavalry -1. So it's -3 altogether. -3 altogether. Now roll 1 die. Ooh. Come on. Archers roll a 1. -3. -2. Okay. I guess I go to the fire results table now. The target is disorder or normal status. Okay, so the target is normal mounted. And I don't see any... Oops, I don't see any die roll modifiers. Fire results table. Oh yeah, okay. Less than or equal to target mounted normal. No effect. No effect. Okay, so you... I want to roll high. Okay, so that was very ineffective fire. And yeah, I guess that's that. I mean, because the Turkoman were used is full movement allowance. Okay, so I'm going to continue on down the line. So interestingly, just in progress here, the first 4 knights, only 1 was able to be restrained. As a result of countercharging, 2 of 3 Turkoman light cavalry were disordered. Oh, and even Baldwin couldn't even restrain his own knights that he was stacked with. So just to finish this out, this is all the result of the attempted missile fire and countercharging of 7 knights. 3 were restrained, 4 countercharged. Of the 4 Turkoman units countercharged, 3 wound up disordered. And of the 3 Turkoman attackers, none had any effect on the knights with missile fire. Okay. I think that takes care of the move fire phase for Sokman. There is a shock phase, but I don't know if it's allowed or not. I don't think there's going to be any shock. Could be wrong about that, but I don't think there's going to be any shock in the forces considered here. Go on to phase D, rally. Rally any disorder units that did nothing for the entire activation and that are currently not adjacent enemy units. We don't have any that qualify. They, of course, all did something, and they're adjacent enemy. Okay, so now we go to phase E again, the continuation. So I guess again, the Turkish side can select a leader except for the leader that just went. So except for Sokman. So I guess Turks could go back to choosing Karaca again or Turkmenish. And then, let's get right into it. Turkish player chooses Karaca. And then the Crusader side can try to seize. So it'll be Bohemond again. So I will test for whether Bohemond here seizes continuity. So Bohemond rolled a 2. Success. His activation rating is 4, so equal to or less than that. He seizes continuity. So Bohemond is going to... Well, I have his knights. He's within 2 hexes of the Syrian medium cavalry. I guess now is the time to take a look at actual charging and whether medium cavalry can countercharge knights. Okay, I'm going to have to step through this slowly, step by step. Okay, here's Bohemond's command. All knights. I want to charge with every knight that I can. But I guess I don't put... And I guess I don't place the charge markers yet. I'm not sure why. Okay, so he's going to charge, he's going to charge, he's going to charge. I want him to charge, but I guess that I would have to be, the Syrian medium cavalry would have to be in his frontal hex when he charges. So the first thing is I want to do a facing change, right? So we are still in the move fire phase, which is why I'm saying these guys want to charge, but I actually don't have to declare it. I'm just saying what I'm intending to do. Knight does a facing change so that when we get to the shock phase, the whole idea is when I get to the shock phase, I can only have 1 or 2 hexes between the charger and the target. And I think that's period, no more, no less. Must have 1 or 2 hexes between the charger and the target. So that's what I mean by he's going to charge, he's going to charge, he's going to charge, and he's going to charge now. Anyways, did a facing change. Is that considered movement? A quick scan says it's not movement. Because the point being that if I want to charge with a knight that has moved now, there's a -1 penalty later in the shock, and I'm surprised that I don't have a marker that says, moved or something. I don't see it. So after all this time with this series, I'm surprised I have to remember who moved, or, of course, I'm not trying to be difficult here. Of course, I'll just use my own homemade marker, but bottom line is I have to remember who moved because there's a penalty later in the charge. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to move with the rest of the knights around the flank, but I'm only going to charge with these 4. And again, I'm assuming this facing change did not count as movement. So these 4 are going to charge later, and they're going to charge as having not moved during this move and fire phase. Okay, now I'm going to move the rest of these knights around, and that should wrap up the move fire phase. I don't think that medium cavalry can countercharge. I think only heavy cavalry and knights can countercharge. And now, well, I guess I'll check whether they can retreat before combat, and actually whether that's even relevant to a charge. Okay, I don't think that medium cavalry can retreat before combat in this case. Okay, with that movement done, we're going to the shock phase. Step 1 is the active player designates which of his units are attacking, which defending units including charges. So I'll declare my charges. I guess I now mark them with charge markers. Okay, moving on to step 2. I am going to move my chargers adjacent to their targets. There isn't any reaction fire from this medium cavalry. And there is no charge reluctance for these knights. And there is no retreat before combat for the defenders. And there are no counter charges by these defenders. So that is step 2 right there. Okay, so I'm moving on to step 3. I'm going to resolve all of these charge attacks in the order that the Crusader player would want. I'm going to do advances and going to look at continued attack. Let's see if... Where are they? So these are basically shock attacks using a special charge combat results table for knights and heavy cavalry. And what was that saying? Oh yeah, continued. What was it? Continued attack. Continued attack. There we go. We have continued attack markers too. It says continued attack -1 on the front, continued attack -2 on the back. So we'll see what happens here. Right off the bat, the first charge, the knights, they rolled a 4. They added 2 for the weapon system matrix, which is, well, I don't know if it's funny, but the possible die roll modifiers for shock or charge has plus or minus strength advantage. First time I've even heard the term strength advantage in this game, but I just guessed, well, I'm assuming that strength advantage is the weapon system matrix. So from that I took a +2. So he rolled a 4 +2 for 6. 6 against a normal defending unit is defender disordered, so I flipped him over, and retreat 1 hex. Now, the Syrian medium cavalry is boxed in with, actually I didn't consider whether he can retreat here. It wouldn't make any sense, but anyways, all right, I'll check that. But if he cannot retreat, he's eliminated, and then I'll figure out what the value of that is to the Crusader side. Okay. I'm not even sure I read that right, but okay, so he can retreat into an enemy Zoc. And this hex isn't even a Zoc of the knight, because I think the knight's Zoc is the frontal hexes, the 2 front hexes, that's it. So strangely enough, I don't know if it's strange or not, but he can move here, and he can do a facing change. I'm not sure I got that right, but that's what I think it is. I wonder if I got that wrong. I imagine the knight there is going to have to advance. Oh, and then does he check for continued attack? Okay, first things first, continued attack is actually a CRT result, and I didn't get that. And now I know what was throwing me off for just a minute for the question of how that unit retreats, and it has to do with wording. You have this long, it's not long, you have a full paragraph, and you have line after line that starts with it, right? It must end, it may not stack, it may move, it throughout. And I just had to double check the it must be the original, a unit must retreat. I don't like the fact that this sentence, for example, is interspersed here. So any leader stacked with the unit must retreat with it, and then it may move, blah, blah, blah. Is it the leader or the unit that retreated? It's a language thing, but all right, the it must be always the unit that must retreat. So I guess he can retreat there, and he may change facing. Now there's still the knight advancing after combat, and then I'll finish the other 3. I'll only pause if I get a result worth mentioning. Okay, so there are a number of different points about advancing after combat, but I do think from a quick read, the knight actually must advance after combat. Okay, that didn't take long. The very next knight rolled very well and got a Defender Disordered, Defender Retreat, so boom, and Continued Attack. So I assume he still advances after combat, and he's marked with Continued Attack. I know that he can't continue charging, so I know that's done. So he's marked with Continued Attack, and we'll handle that later. So I've got these two, just of note, I've got these two knights charging the Syrian medium cavalry there. So this is against the front, this is against the flank, which is pretty devastating because you get a +4 for a combination of front and flank. So anyways, rolled a 4, which doesn't sound very good, but adding 6 to that, it's 10. So I get a Disorder, Retreat, and Continued Attack. What I find interesting that I just noticed is charging a normal unit cannot be destroyed outright, only if it's already disordered. So so that's the importance of disordering your target first, but no out-and-out eliminations against a normal unit. That's not bad for the first contact. Out of 4 knights charging, we got 3 continued attacks. And we disordered all 3 of the target medium cavalry. All right, so now we go on to step 4. Yeah, step 4. All continued attacks are now resolved. Begin again, step 1. Except all units must attack. Yeah, this is going to be normal shock. Charging and countercharging is not allowed. Okay, so we'll go through. I mean, obviously, he'll attack here, he'll attack here, he'll attack here. So we'll try to... Now we can wipe out... Oh. So this is all the same charge and everything. Now I can wipe out... now I could wipe out those 2 disordered medium cavalry. Okay, this is of note because the first Sicilian Norman Knight continued attack against the disordered Syrian medium cavalry here. Rolled a 1, which with DRMs resulted in no result. So I removed the continued attack marker and they just sit here. The next knight rolled a 9. After die roll modifiers, the result against a disordered target is Defender eliminated. Defender eliminated, and continued attack. So I think I flipped this over. Oh, I guess he would advance. Now I have to figure out, can he change facing? And then I'll resolve this last one here. Okay, this seems nice that I actually got a clear-cut answer. He advances because he had normally he would be able to do a facing change, but because he has a continued attack result, which is flipped to -2 now, he cannot change facing. And specifically, I'm supposed to leave him marked like this, even though currently there's no enemy in his frontal hexes. Okay, I'm assuming that as you go through with more of this string of continued attacks, it's possible, I guess, to get an enemy into the frontal hex so that when you then went around to do the -2 continued attacks, he would have a legitimate target. And we had yet another extreme result, a 0 for this one, which is just no effect. So just ends. I guess now because he has no target in his frontal hexes, that's done. But then we'll wrap up this shock phase for the Crusaders. Okay, I think I'm done with Bohemond and his knights there. Interestingly, I'm going on to phase D, rally phase. And it says, rally any disordered units that did nothing for the entire activation and that are currently not adjacent to an enemy unit. I read that because it doesn't say anything about which player. So, given the no turn structure of the game design, that makes me sound like it's any units from both sides that qualify for that. So I'll take a look at that. Okay, I don't think so. On the one hand, rallying is pretty easy in that if a unit qualifies, it's just flipped over, it just recovers. So on that, on the one hand, that's easy recovery, but on the other hand, the rules text actually says the unit has to do nothing and not be an enemy's OC during their activation. Okay, so that does imply that that's just disordered units of the currently activated formation. Okay, so there is no rallying. So we are on phase E, continuation phase. And I will mark that for remembering later. And that concludes this video.